Bennie Randall Show. It's the Bennie Randall Show. It's the Bennie Randall Show. It's the Bennie Randall Show.
Welcome to another edition of the Bennie Randall Show. I'm your host, Bennie Randall Jr., a.k.a. The Motivator. And this powerful show brings you conversations with today's stars and tomorrow's legends. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. Come on.
It's the Bennie Randall Show. 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 I love that Bennie Randall. I love that Bennie Randall. I love that Bennie Randall Show. Yeah. I love that Bennie Randall. I love that Bennie Randall. I love that Bennie Randall Show. Yeah.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Bennie Randall Show. I'm your host, Bennie Randall Jr., a.k.a. The Motivator, a.k.a. Global Entrepreneur and Business Advisor. And it's a wonderful day in the neighborhood. And thank you for allowing me into your hearts and your homes. And like always, we got another powerful show. Today, we got Mr. Dr. Will Moreland. Dr. Will, named a top diversity keynote speaker, best-selling author, and performance expert who helps leaders and team members at all levels in an organization understand how and why diversity and inclusion is vital. This results in more productive, engaged, and purpose-driven team or organization. Dr. Will has presented over 1,200 keynote presentations for global brands to local brands and for associates at local, state, national, and international levels. As an opening keynote speaker, he is one of the best in the speaking industry. His high energy keynote speaking that fuels the enthusiasm of the conference or event. He's a humorous and entertaining keynote speaker that engages your audience to listen and learn. A conference opening keynote speaker that infuses his messages with the kind of humor that makes your attendees laugh out loud and inspires them to want to do more, be more, achieve more than they've ever thought possible. I don't know about you, but I want to meet this brother right here. Welcome to the stage, ladies and gentlemen. The one, the only. If there's another, he's a phony. Dr. Will. What's going on?
My man, Bennie Randall. What's going on, my man? Super excited to be here with you, man.
Hey, man, I appreciate you being here, man. And we're going to talk about the art and the speaking business from a whole different level. You know, a lot of times people just think because they can talk, they can speak. And people don't understand that it takes impact. It takes a lot of different things to make it right. So I always like to ask people. And yeah, I did say axe. Well, I always like to ask people. I'm going to speak how I speak. I don't care what nobody y'all think, but but I always like to ask people, what is your special sauce?
Oh, you starting early. You want me to give up the special sauce, huh? You want me to give up the special sauce?
Just
well,
like
for me, brother. For me, it's all about being authentic and taking your experiences in your life and then figuring out a way to deliver it in such a way that the audience can grab something and do something with it. You know, it's no good for an audience just to walk away saying, oh, that guy was motivating, or, oh, that guy made me laugh, if they don't walk away with tips, tools, and strategies that they can live to improve their life. So for me, it's about being authentic and creating a recipe that they can walk away and be full from. So that's my secret sauce right there, man, being authentic.
Yeah, I believe in every glory, there's a story, you know, so people always see the part of it that, you see the glory you see by the time the person don't got to that point. Let's talk about before you got there, because that's where the real story is at. Tell me about the first time you ever speak and how did it go?
Yes. Oh, real funny story, because I call myself the accidental speaker because I never had aspirations of being a speaker. To be honest with you, I didn't even know that there was this industry of speaking that existed. Like I knew about Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar, Lisa Leslie, Lisa Nichols, Les Brown, and I just thought that they had got like this magic wand that allowed them to go across the nation and speak. I didn't know that you could say, "Hey, I want to be a public speaker." And so I had a consultant company, and I had just recently moved back to the United States after living in Europe for 14 years, and I was moved to Phoenix, Arizona. And I had this consultant company, and I was doing everything I could to build the consultant company, but it wasn't going like I wanted it to go. And so one day I'm at lunch with a buddy, and I'm really complaining to him, like, man, things are not going the way I want them to go. My wife is pregnant with our son. The savings is dwindling. I need something to happen. And he says, man, you've been speaking before. I've heard you speak before. You used to be a pastor, man. You should become a professional speaker. And now I had spoken before. You know how it goes. You know, people would ask you to come and do Martin Luther King and come do Black History and talk about your success. But they would give me a gift card, or they would give me a pat on the back and be like, oh, that was amazing. And so when he told me this, I said, man, are you crazy? Man, I just told you I need some money, and you talking about go be a speaker. And he pulled out this check for $3,500 and said, I just got paid this for speaking 1 hour. He had my attention. He had my attention. I said, what? He said, yeah, man, this is how much I get paid to speak. And I said, wait, hold on. Because, you know, I started looking at this dude, sizing him up and saying, wait a minute, I could probably run circles around this dude speaking. And somebody just gave him $3,500. And he says, listen, man, next week there's this conference that this speakers conference where they teach you how to speak and all this kind of stuff. You need to come with me. So I went down there, and I got there, and it was about 1,500 speakers in there. So now wait a minute. I go from not even knowing this was a thing to, wait, it's 1,500 other speakers? Now I'm like, wait, where am I going to fit? Where's my voice? Oh my God. But the guy who was teaching the training, he did such a great job that he convinced me that I could do this. He convinced me that there was money in this industry. So I come back to Arizona. I'm pumped up. I'm motivated. And then I get my first gig. I'm traveling to my first gig, and I think I'm lost because I'm not seeing a conference center. I'm not seeing a hotel. I'm not seeing anything that looks like a place to speak. I'm in this residential area. And so I called the lady who had hired me to speak, and I said, I think I'm lost. And she says, well, tell me where you are. Tell me. I said, I'm driving down the street, and it's just houses. She says, yeah, look for the gray one. Look for the gray one.
Mm-hmm.
Look for the gray one. Man, I walk into this house. The event was held in her living room. And so my very first gig was in a living room. But here was the thing, though. I said to myself, you know what? I'm about to give these people the best keynote that they have ever had in their life. Because I remember one of my mentors telling me one time, he says, Will, it doesn't matter if it's one person in the room or 1,000 people in the room. Always show up with your A game. And so I delivered my A game. And that was my first experience speaking as a professional speaker, getting a paycheck. I think I got $150 that initial time to go speak. But I was now a professional speaker, and I was ready to go, man.
Wow, that's good that you got $150. On my first one, there ain't nobody showed up. You know what I mean? There was the cleaner that he was looking in the window, and he kind of, I think he felt kind of sorry because he didn't really know what was going on. This brother here talking to empty chairs. So you did good. At least you had a house. I was in an auditorium with nobody in there but me, man. So you did good on your first one. You know what I mean? So you did perfectly good. I don't even know if I did good because there was nobody there to tell me. You know, so it's all good though. So let's get into the business of speaking, because you know, I think people don't realize that the business of speaking is just like show business. It's probably 95% business and 5% show. And there's an art form to making this a business. What are some of the things that you have learned that new speakers need to know right off the back?
Yeah, you just said it. understanding that it's a business. That's one of the things that I realized starting out. It didn't matter how motivated you were, it didn't matter how much passion you had. If you didn't have the foundational business principles in place, then you were going to end up with an empty calendar and nowhere to speak. And so one of the things that I realized, because after I came back from that conference, it was maybe about 4 to 5 months before I even got that initial gig to go and speak. And the reason why was because I didn't take it as a business. I just said, man, I'm motivated, I'm inspired, I got a message, I want to share it with the world. But then I soon realized, I said, well, no, this is not going to work. And so what I did, Benny, was I took 6 months and I said, okay, I'm going to take 6 months and I'm going to learn this business, and I'm going to study from the best of the best, the Les Browns, the Lisa Nichols, the Tony Robbins. And I wanted to know, why was one speaker getting a gift card and another speaker getting $25,000, $50,000, $10,000 to speak? And when I started studying it, I came away with this thing that I call this formula that I call my PAM formula. And the best of the best, they had these three things. Number one, they had a position. They took a position in the market. And number two, they knew what their advantage was. They knew what their unique advantage was. And then number three, they were good at marketing. And so when I started putting these three things together, having a strong position, that's your keynote, understanding what problem that you solve, and then what is your unique advantage? There's all of us speaking out there, and let's just take a topic like leadership. Leadership is leadership, insight, vision, character, all that type of stuff. But what's your unique advantage? So I started looking for my unique advantage. What was going to separate me from the Bennie Randalls? What was going to separate me from the Les Browns? What was going to separate me from the ETs out in the world? And I started identifying what made Will Moreland unique in the marketplace. So I'm originally from Compton. I was in the military. I lived in Europe for 14 years. I've traveled. So I began to look at all the things that made me unique, and that became my advantage. But then here's where the rubber meets the road, that marketing. If nobody knows about you, nobody can hire you. And I know we've all been taught things like, let the work speak for itself. Don't toot your own horn. Well, I'm here to tell you, if you don't toot your own horn, nobody else is going to toot it for you. And
you
so
got that right.
Here, man, those three things were key for me understanding what I needed to do to build my business.
So let's go a little deeper now. Understanding your structure, I believe like every speaker is different. Me personally, I don't write down none of my presentations. I use bullet points in my head. You know, they call me the Jay-Z of speaking because I just don't write it down on paper in that aspect. What is your technique for engaging the audience, and how do you prepare for, because each audience is different. Every audience is totally different from, and so you got to know what that audience wants and what they're looking for. What is your technique and strategy for doing that?
Yeah, good question. So Stephen Covey, in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he suggested that you start with the end in mind. And just like you said, the audience is the end. That's the end goal, making sure the audience gets what they need. So for me, I start with the audience. Whoever's bringing me in, we usually have a conversation, and I ask them, what is your takeaway? If I could ask you, if we could just wave a wand and everything just works out perfectly, what would you want your audience to walk away with? And whatever their goal is, that's what I go after, because that's why they hired you. They didn't hire you to get up there and show how eloquent you are, how smart you are, or how funny or whatever. It's they have a goal for their audience. So once I understand their goal for the audience, I then begin to prepare. And I'm similar to you. I don't write down keynotes. I don't write down. I don't use notes or PowerPoints or anything like that. I just study myself full, and study about the audience, study about the organization that I'm going into. And then for me, from my military days, inside the military, we use a lot of acronyms. And so for me, I would come up, if it's a theme for the conference or something like that, or a thought, I would come up with an acronym in my mind. Now, I may tell the audience what the acronym is, or I may not, but I'll have it in my mind. So one of my keynotes is called Living from Your Core, CORE. And that's an acronym that stands for clarity, opportunities, relationships, and experiences. So whether I share that with the audience or not, in my brain, I know point number 1 is clarity. Point number 2 is opportunities. Point number 3 is relationships. Point number 4 is experiences. And then I'm going to connect and tie in stories that are going to be relevant to that audience, that's going to make sense, that's going to undergird the point I'm trying to make. And so that's the framework that I use. I like to use, whether I use it once again with the audience or not, I like to just get an acronym in my head, the 3 C's, the 4 D's, or whatever it may be. And that helps me stay on point.
I remember seeing you in a video, and you was rolling on the floor. The lights went out. For a minute, I thought you was dancing, but I didn't know what was going on. But I thought it was very interesting that you took that moment and you engaged that moment in a level. Tell me a little bit about that, and what was the thought process when that happened? Because I'm not sure if the lights went off or something like that, but I did see you rolling on the floor. So I didn't know if that was a new dance or what was going on. But
so that was
me.
two different. So there was a time where I was speaking, doing a keynote, and the lights went out. And that's, once again, I tell all of our speakers inside of our academy, you're always going to practice more than you play. You're always going to prepare more than you play. So if you think about an athlete, they go to practice 3-4 times out of the week, but the game is only 2 hours. The game is only 2 hours. You think about an Olympic sprinter that races for 10 seconds, 9 seconds, but think about how many hours of preparation has went in. You think about an individual that runs a marathon. Marathon is 26.2 miles, but how many miles before the 26 miles have they had to put in? So for me, I'm a big proponent on understanding your craft and working your craft and practicing your craft. And so one time I'm giving this keynote, and the lights go out. And I could see the young lady, she's panicking. The hotel staff is panicking. And I stayed there, and this story that I had read before came into my mind about a trainer who was training a lion, and the lights went out in the circus. And he had this story about he kept cracking the whip. He just kept cracking the whip because a lion can't see in the dark. And so the gentleman understood to just keep cracking the whip. That would keep the lion in place. So I used that story in that moment, and it just worked. Sometimes things just work out perfectly. When I got to just keep cracking the whip, and eventually the lights will come back on. As soon as I said that, the lights came back on. And then that other situation you were talking about, I was doing an illustration. And for me, I'm the type of speaker, Benny, whatever I need to do to get the point across, I'm going to get the point across. And so this particular time, I was talking about a biblical story where there was a man that was sick, and he was near the pool of Bethesda. And he said that he said there was nobody that could put him in the pool when the water got stirred up. It was, the story says that when the water would get stirred up, anybody who touched the water, they would be made whole. But this guy stood there for 20 years, and he says, I'm a cripple. I don't have nobody to put me in the water. And so my illustration was, if that was me, if I had to roll into the water, if I had to crawl into the water, I was going to get into the water. And so that's the clip that you saw me rolling on the floor to illustrate that whatever you need to do in your season of urgency, you need to do it. So that was the message, your season of urgency. And that's how I demonstrated it.
Oh, I thought that was funny. I thought that was really funny, but it was very entertaining. And I believe that people got to be able to entertain the audience. You got to be able to engage the audience. And then, you got to have the message in the mess, whatever that mess is. Tell us a little bit about where you started. I often hear you talk about Compton. You started out in Compton, and, you had a different type of career back then. Talk to the audience, because a lot of times people don't want to share, that other story. Because I remember, like, when I was so broke I couldn't pay attention. You know what I mean? So I know there's a story behind the story. So explain a little bit about where you came from and how you ended up here, coming from Compton. And did you live next door to Snoop Dogg?
So, you said it earlier. You said people see the glory, but they don't know the story. And
Mhm.
I was raised in Compton, California, back in the early 80s when they said and designated Compton as literally the worst city in America. And it was interesting though, because I was raised by my single mother and my grandmother. And so inside the house, I was getting everything that a kid could need: love, structure. My grandmother was giving me a strong faith foundation. But when I got outside, the temptations of our environment was so strong, and didn't really have a male a male presence in my life. So I did find myself getting in trouble, getting on the wrong side of the law. And then when I was 12 years old, my grandmother died. And when my grandmother died, she was kind of that standard. She was the foundation of our house. And so for me, she kind of kept me in line. And when she died, it was like I didn't have a reason. I didn't have a reason to live. I didn't have nobody to look up to. I didn't have anybody that I was worried about. If I disappointed them, then and so when she died, I kind of went wayward and started getting into a lot of trouble. I ended up joining gangs. I ended up selling drugs. And fortunately, when I was 18 years old, I got arrested and I was in jail. I went to the court, and this gentleman, the judge that I call a disruptor, he looked at me and he says, "Mr. Moreland, you're headed nowhere fast. You just turned 18 years old." He says, "If I send you to jail right now, you'll have a record for the rest of your life. But what I'm going to do for you is I'm going to allow you to leave my courtroom and come back in 2 weeks. And I want you to come and tell me what you're going to do with your life and why I shouldn't put you in one of our nice facilities, AKA jail." Well, Benny, to be honest with you, when I left there, I said, you know what? I'm on a 2-week vacation because I'm getting ready to go to jail. I'm on a 2-week vacation. I have no clue what I want to do with my life. I don't know what I'm going to tell this guy in 2 weeks, what I'm going to be doing. So in my mind, I was like, let me go party. Let me get with my boys. And we just about to ride out. Well, as fate would have it, 2 days before I was returning to court, I'm in the mall, I'm walking around, and the second disruptor in my life, a gentleman by the name of Corey Oliver, he came up to me and he asked a question that changed my life. He says, "Hey man, have you ever thought about going to the Army?" And to be honest with you, I had never thought about it. But in that moment, if it was any other time, if it was any other situation, I probably would have laughed in his face. But I'm sure you've been in that situation before where you knew that this was like a Kairos moment, that this was a life-defining moment. And that's what happened for me. I looked at Corey and I said, "Come on, man, let's go." And he was so shocked because later on he shared with me, he says, "Man, I've been walking up and down this mall for 2 years. I've never put nobody in the military, in the Army, because people from where I came from, we didn't join the Army. We didn't go. They told me in my community the Army was no place for a Black man." But fortunately, Corey saw me. He asked me that question. I went back. He went back 2 days later. We went back to the court. He went with me. We told the judge that I had signed up for the Army. The judge looked at me. He says, "Mr. Moreland, I think that you made a wonderful decision. I wish you the best in life. Go and do great things." And so it was just God's grace that I got that particular judge. It could have been anybody else. It was God's grace that Corey Oliver saw me that day in the mall. And that's what started my turnaround, my change around, because then I joined the military. And that's when I started getting structure. I start understanding discipline. I start understanding what it meant to have a standard for your own self. And that's when I fell in love with personal development and leadership development that has taken me to where I am right now.
Yeah, that is powerful. How did that pivot happen, going from the military to being on the stage? Nobody goes to military and be like, "Oh man, when I get out, I want to be a professional speaker. I want to do that." Nobody does that. So how did that play out in pivoting you to being on the stage and writing so many books, et cetera, et cetera? How was that pivot? Because a lot of times people are under the impression that when you go to the military, you go to the skills you learn there may not work in
Right.
civilian life. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
So, you learn how to do a bomb, you learn how to blow up a
Mhm.
plane, whatever, but it doesn't help you here. How did
Yeah.
you pivot from that point over to the business of speaking?
Yeah, definitely. So I meet my third disruptor, a gentleman by the name of Command Sergeant Major Babs. And I met him because I was getting ready to get kicked out of the Army. And here's the thing, even though I was 8,000 miles away, I was stationed in Germany, even though I was physically 8,000 miles away, mentally, I was still in Compton. And so I was still handling things the way I had learned to handle things in Compton. And here's a real funny story. So where I grew up, once again, surrounded by gangs, and we had a phrase in California, in Compton, where a gang member, they would ask you, where you from? And what they were asking you was, what hood are you claiming? What hood, what gang are you from? And so when I joined the military, as you can imagine, there's people from literally all around the United States. And so that was a question that people would ask, where are you from? Now, in my thinking, everybody was asking me not if I was from California, but they were asking me what gang I'm from. And so dude would be like, stall it out, man. I'm just asking you, I'm from New York, man. I'm from Florida, man. I'm just asking you where you come from. But in my
Mhm.
mind, I'm like, oh, okay. I thought everybody was set tripping on me. So I end up, getting in trouble again in the military. And once again, I'm before the sergeant major. They want to kick me out. And the sergeant major says, you know what, Moreland, I read your record. I see you're from Compton. If I kick you out, what's going to happen? You're going to get killed or you're going to be in jail. So I'm not going to
Mhm.
kick you out. I'm going to let you come work for me. He let me be his assistant, but he asked me this question, another defining question. Moreland, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Now, nobody had ever asked me that in the 19 years that I had been living. No one had ever asked me about my future. No one ever asked me about vision. I tell him, Sergeant Major, I don't know where I see myself. He says, I want you to go home this weekend. And when you come back on Monday, be able to tell me where you see yourself in 5 years. I go back on Monday. I say, Sergeant Major, two things. Number one, I want to be the best soldier that I can be. Number two, I want to get into school. I want to get my education. He says, I can help you with both. I get into college, as it would be. I take this speaking course. And I'm a natural. Everybody else is intimidated. They're scared. And this
Mhm.
lady by the name of Miss Copeland, after about a third or fourth session in class, she comes up to me and she says, Will, you have something. You have something special. This is what you're supposed to be doing. And she hands me this book. And she hands me this book by a gentleman by the name of Dr. Dennis Kimbrough. And the book
Mhm.
was Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice. And she says, I want you to read this book. And I began to read that book by Dennis Kimbrough. And as I read that book, this was the first time, up until this time, the only successful people that I saw was drug dealers, athletes, or entertainers. I didn't see entrepreneurs. I didn't see successful business individuals. That's all I knew. But inside this book, I began to learn about a Herman J. Russell, one of the leading entrepreneurs in Atlanta. I began to learn about Bob Johnson, the CEO of BET. Then I learned about a gentleman by the name of Reginald F. Lewis, who was the first Black person to purchase $1 billion company. And for the first time, I had imagery. I had an image of somebody who looked like me, came from where I came from, but they were using their brain. They were using their mind. They weren't using a talent like singing or dancing, or they weren't, catching a ball or bouncing the ball or hitting the ball. They were using their intellect to generate income. I found my happy place. I said, I can do this. I can do this. And so as I read that book, it opened up other doors to me to read other books. And then I started reading all the classics, the Magic of Thinking Big, Acres of Diamond, 3 Feet from Gold, the original Think and Grow Rich. I started reading The Richest Man in Babylon. And now my mind is expanding. And now I know this is what I don't know what this thing is. Like, I didn't know all the terminology, personal development, mentorship, coaching, life coaching, and all that kind of stuff. None of that existed back. This is in the 90s. None of that existed back then. I just knew that this stuff was working for me, and I wanted to share it with everybody else. And so I didn't know what it was going to look like. I just knew that this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And so here I am in the military. I'm trying to teach all my soldiers, anybody who would listen, about this personal development. And my leaders was like, to your point, man, no, I need you to teach them Army skills. I need you to teach them how to throw this grenade. I need you to teach them how to recharge their weapon, their M16. But my heart wasn't there. My heart wasn't there anymore to be a soldier. And so that's when I knew it was time for me to leave, because I couldn't give 100%. And if you're in the military, if you're not going to give 100%, that literally is an occupation where it's life and death. People's lives are in your hands. And if you can't be focused and give 100%, then you don't need to be in. So I knew that I needed to follow my passion, follow my heart. And I didn't know what, once again, we didn't have all this terminology like we have now. I just knew I wanted to help people better their lives.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us, you're listening to the Bennie Randall Show. I'm your host, Bennie Randall Jr., aka the Motivator, aka Global Entrepreneur, Business Advisor, and Investor. And we are speaking to Mr. Dr. Will about the art of business and professional speaking right here on episode 107. And if you just joined it, just make sure you can rewind and look at the full thing on YouTube at Vanoy Media. That's Vanoy Media on YouTube, the entire full show. Or you can check it out on LinkedIn. You can check it out on Facebook, or wherever you got a platform. Ladies and gentlemen, that's where we're at, all right? Let's move on. We through the halfway point of Dr. Will. Let's move on to the fun part. This is the part I like the most. Let's go to the revenue part, all right? Because there's a lot of people that speak, but there's a lot of people that don't make money. You know what I mean? So what's the difference between a speaker and a professional speaker who actually gets paid? And what is the beginning points for those people who want to get paid? Like I told you, my first one, I didn't get paid and nobody showed up, so that was a double whammy. I actually lost money. Because, I had to rent the place, and it was just, the cleaners was outside. He looked at me pretty sad, but I act like I know what I was doing. This was a test of the emergency broadcasting system. So let me ask you something. Let's talk about the revenue aspect of it, because, a lot of people speak for free. How do you make money in this speaking business?
Yeah, so it goes back to exactly what you just said. Are you speaking, or are you a professional? And when you look at that professional, that's a pro. So it starts with you making the decision that I'm going to be a professional. I'm going to stop playing at the YMCA, and I'm going to really pursue being a professional. And so if you look at a LeBron James being in the NBA, he's a professional. He's different than the guy that's playing down at the YMCA. So as a speaker, you want to ask yourself, okay, I'm going to do this as a business. You need to make a determination that I'm going to do this as a business. And you mentioned it earlier, Benny, about show business, where there's speaker business, and 5 to 10%, I am on the stage. The other 90% is me running and operating a business. So what are some of those foundational things in running a business? Number one, what problem do you solve? So as a speaker, a company's not going to hire you just to come and tell a feel-good story. Now, back in the 80s, early 90s, it was a lot of that. It was a lot of just come in, inspire our people, motivate our people. But what companies realized was that motivation was just like a shower. It wears off, and it wears off fast. And so on Friday, we had our end of the year, end of the quarter conference, and this speaker came in and got us really motivated and inspired. But by Monday, their teams were coming in lagging. And so the industry of speaking has shifted from just being motivational to, wait, how can you help us with the bottom line? How can you help us move our numbers? And so as a speaker, you have to ask yourself, what problem do you solve? So let's just, to make it real practical for everybody, let's say a problem in corporate America is turnover. A company has a high turnover rate. So what can you do inside your talk that's going to convince their employees not to quit after this company has invested thousands upon thousands of dollars in training them and onboarding them? What can you do in your program that's going to help them? How can you help leaders communicate better to their employees? So with inside our company and our consulting company, we have this program where we call taking employees into partnership. And so what we do is help employees shift their mindset from thinking I'm just an employee, because the employee mindset is a mindset that says they don't pay me enough. Employee mindset is I start at 8 and I'm leaving at 5. I'm shutting down at 4 o'clock actually. And so how can we take that employee base and shift them from just being employees to thinking like partners of the company? So when they're thinking about partnership, now they're thinking like a partner. What would a partner do? What would an owner do in this situation? So now they're going above and beyond. And so we get them to start thinking like that. A company's going to pay you for that because that's going to move the bottom line. If you have employees, you have 100 employees, and let's say 50 of them was marginal, and you can hire me to come in and I can take that 50 that's marginal and get 25 of them to produce at a higher rate. Well, what does that mean to the bottom line? So let's just say if they're producing at a higher rate, those 25, and it's netting the company an extra $4 million, then they have no problem giving me my fee of $50,000 because I help them move the bottom line. So as a speaker, you got to ask yourself, because at the end of the day, the company wants to know what's in it for us. Like you just telling your inspirational story, that's great, but what's in it for us? What's really going to move the needle? So those are some initial things that speakers need to think about. Number one, really understanding that this is a business. Number two, what problem do you solve? And then number three, putting it in a framework where you can deliver it like a product.
Very, very powerful. I love how you brought that across. So what if I ask you for 3 mistakes that new speakers make, what would you say in trying to get paid? What are 3 mistakes that they made, why they don't get paid?
Yeah. So number one, you're not clear. You're not clear on who you are. Remember, we talked about that PAM formula. So you haven't taken up a position. You haven't taken up a position in the market. This is the problem I solve. So if you think about it like this, Benny, hamburgers are hamburgers. They're all hamburgers. But if I say, man, I have a taste for a Big Mac, where are you going to tell me to go? You're going to tell me to go to McDonald's because the Big Mac belongs to McDonald's. Now, if I said I wanted a Whopper, you're going to tell me, oh, that's not McDonald's, that's Burger King, right? So as a speaker, you got to get crystal clear. People have to know you for something specific. If we need leadership development, Dr. Will is our guy. If we want to take our employees to the next level, Dr. Will is our guy. If you're driving down the street and you look at a restaurant and it says we sell fish, hamburger, pasta, pizza, corn dogs, you're going to look like, man, are they? What? That's confusing. So you want to get crystal clear on your positioning. Then what is your competitive advantage? For me, it was being in the military. So a lot of our intellectual property is centered around those type of examples. So the stories that I'm going to use about team building, about courage, about leadership is coming from that experience. And then marketing. You have to be communicating on a consistent basis. I tell our speakers all the time in our academy, if they don't know about you, they can't hire you. So you have to get a system. You got to get a system in place that every single day that you're reminding somebody, that you're encouraging somebody, or that you're influencing somebody to hire you. This has to happen every single day. And a lot of times what happens to new speakers, they may look up and get a gig, and then they're excited. And then they're celebrating that gig for 3 weeks, not understanding that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, you're only good. You're only good as your last hit.
You're only good as
So,
your last hit. And so it doesn't matter how full that hotel was last weekend. They trying to get full again this weekend and the next weekend and the next weekend. So those are three major things that I see young speakers make.
And another thing I see people come and often ask me about, and I'm curious what it is. I think you spoke on it about 3 or 4 times, and I just want you to give me a direct answer. And that's anonymity, because most businesses fail because nobody knows who they are. Of course, most speakers going to fail. And then, there's a way you have to do this if you want to scale it. You know what I mean? Because there's only one of you. So there has to be a way to scale. So it's a 2-part question. How do they solve the anonymity point? I think you kind of touched on that right there. And how do they scale being only one speaker?
Yeah. So you probably hear this a lot. You're working with speakers as well. Who's your target market? Man, my message is for everybody. Man, just everybody can be blessed by my message. I can empower everybody. That's the quickest way you can go out of business, because if you're speaking to everybody, you're speaking to nobody. And so a lot of times it would seem that it's counterintuitive. The terminology is pick a niche, right? Pick a niche and get rich. Your mind tells you, no, I need to go after everybody. I need to go after everybody. But it's just like getting married.
But I just want to be transparent here. You just said something that was so dope, and I'm gonna steal it. So I'm gonna just let you know that right there. I don't even want to say it on the air because somebody might steal it from me. But you just dropped a line, and you're not gonna even know what it is until I actually say it. But you just said a line that was really dope. So I just want to be clear and transparent. You can tell Cat Williams this or whatever, but I'm going to steal that line that you just said. Well, go ahead, but I'll tell you in the green room afterwards, but go ahead.
Okay. So it's like when you get married, right? Once you pick that person, everybody else doesn't matter, right? So you have to pick a industry, pick a field. So let's just, to make it real plain for those that are listening to us, let's say you're in the education space. You say, you know what? I'm going to speak in the education space. Okay. Now, when we talk about education, are we talking about K through 12? Are you talking about colleges and university? Are you talking about adult learners? So what space? So let's narrow it down. Let's get to one space, right? Now we got this one space. I want to speak to colleges. Now I want to speak to colleges. So now I know that my message and my target audiences is directed to colleges. So I got real clear on that. To answer your second part, now, who is it that has my money? Who is it that has my money? So your research has to go into, okay, if I want to come and speak at a college, what are the opportunities inside of this college? So am I speaking to a student leadership? Am I speaking to Greek organizations? Am I speaking to the administration? Who am I going to target? Who am I going to speak to? Then once you figure that out, you got to ask yourself, okay, who do I have? Is it a counselor that has my money? Is it the president of the college that has my money? Is it the student union president that has my money? Once you understand in your market who has your money, now you create a system of communicating with them every single day. And this, I can't overemphasize this. Once you choose your market, you're going to be able, in such a powerful way, communicate to that market. You don't have to worry about any other market. So now you can stay on top of what's going on in that market. So what's going on in colleges? What's going on? The government just rescinded college student loans, right? So what does that mean to that industry? How is it going to impact that industry? Does that mean they're going to get an influx of individuals coming into college now? What does that mean? So you should know everything about your industry. And once you do those two things, getting crystal clear on the problem you solve and who you're going to solve it for, now you can begin to talk to these people in a repetitive way. And that's where you're going to start building momentum. That's where you're going to take your business to the next level, because they're going to be able to say, in our industry, he or she is the subject matter expert, because that's who everybody wants to work for. They don't want to work with and work for anybody that's just out there. Oh, I serve everybody. Nobody does that, right? Nobody says, you know what, I'm looking for an average restaurant tonight. You know what, I want to go see an average movie tonight. No one's ever asked you for a recommendation of an average movie or average restaurant. Everybody wants to work with the best of the best. And for you to be the best of the best, you got to niche down and you got to know who you're talking to.
Yeah, the only time they ask for average is when they broke and they said, "Where McDonald's at?" So
Right.
I'm just joking, man. So let's talk about as we get down to the end of this, man. Time goes fast when you're having fun.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: expanding yourself, because a lot of times people won't expand it. So if they don't understand, because being a speaker is a business, you got to expand the things that you're doing, from products to books. I know you've written about 1,000 books, so we just want, how do you expand what you've done? I'm just teasing you here. How do you expand what you've done, and how do you expand yourself as a speaker? Because a lot of times people don't realize that the best way to get into people's heads is to allow them to take a piece of you with them. And
Right.
people don't realize that. They think that, unless I'm here, you can't get it. But you need to be able to let them take a piece of you home, whether that's in an audio book, whether that's in, because that's what we do over here, tons of audio books, a written book, pamphlet, whatever it is. Talk to that, please.
Yeah. So once again, thank you for that, because that was a part of your original question. Thank you for bringing us back to there. So when you think about your keynote, I want you to, once again, you're in business. So when you think about your keynote, understand your keynote is only one product. That's only one product. So think about if you're a business and you only have one product. How limited are you going to be if you only have one product? And so, as Benny was talking about, expanding your IP, expanding your intellectual property, how are some ways that you can do that? So for me, it is through writing books. For me, it's through writing curriculum. So now what I was finding out was people did want more of Dr. Will. They wanted to take Dr. Will home, but you can't take Dr. Will home. I'm getting back on the plane and I'm going home. So what were some of the ways that they could take me home? So we started writing books. We started creating books. We started creating courses for them. So if you want to expand on the information that I gave you, if you want to go deeper on this subject, if you want to learn more, I originally, so many people used to ask me about my story. How did you go from Compton, being in trouble, to being one of the top speakers? So many people were asking me that, and I didn't want to keep explaining and sharing that story over and over and over. So that's why I wrote that book, Genius Potential, back there. Genius Potential is my story. It's from how I went from being a gangbanger and a drug dealer to being a world changer. So now they can say, man, I got a nephew, I got a husband, I got a sister, I got a cousin. They need to hear this story too. They weren't at the conference. So we started making and creating product like that. So now we have more product. Give you another example. Let's say I'm working with a particular organization and they say, man, Dr. Will, your fee is here. Our budget is here. Well, I'm not going to compromise on my fee. So let's say if you can come here, let's tap out at what your budget is, but can you buy 300 books? Oh, we have a materials budget. We have a book budget. We good to go. I don't care how it come in, as long as it come in, right? So
There it is.
boom, give me some over here, and boom, because I have a product, boom, we have it over there. Then we do trainings, right? And so now I can say, well, here's my keynote. Would you be willing to bring me in for a training after we do this keynote to undergird this keynote that I just did? We can do that because we have a training budget. Our training budget is totally different than the budget they gave us for a keynote for this ERG meeting, right? For this conference that we're having. So it's vitally important that you begin to build out your IP in your company. And so when I tell people that, the books that I write, those books are products. And so those products have a target that we want to make. So for instance, I can get into an industry, like I do a lot of work with real estate. with real estate organization. So what did I do? I wrote a book for that industry, right? How to stay motivated as a real estate agent. And so now it's not only, a speaker coming, it's a author that has wrote on our subject. So now it's not just another speaker. He's an expert in our industry on being motivated as a salesperson or as a real estate agent. So those are just some things that when you think about expanding your business and building your business out, so you're not just a one-trick pony, because this business is, if you're in the school, if you're working with schools and you're working K through 12, what do they do in the summertime? They're out of school. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have other courses and you don't have other products that you can sell, what are you going to be doing when they're out of school, those 3 months that they're out of school? So you need to have other products that extend your offers, that extend your capabilities to continue to generate revenue.
Very, very powerful. We got about less than 10 minutes left. So we're going to play a word game. And the word game is, I'm going to give you a word and you're going to tell me, you're going to tell me what it means to you. All right. You're going to have 3 words and I'm going to give you a word and then you're going to tell me what it means to you. The first word is power.
First word is power. The first thing that comes to my mind is opportunity.
No, you got to elaborate, brother. This ain't just one word. You got to elaborate.
So
I'm going to give you a word. You're going to tell me what it means to you.
Yeah. So when I think about power, I think about opportunity. Having power gives you opportunity to do different things in your life. It gives you the opportunity to have different experiences in your life. And so when I think about power, I just think about the different opportunities it enables me to do.
I like that. I like that. The next word is impact.
Impact. So for me, when I think about impact, I think about the word service. One of the things that my grandmother taught me years ago was to have a servant's heart. And it was one of the things that Jesus said to his disciples. They came and asked him, who is the greatest among us? And he says, the greatest among you is the person who serves. And so when I think about impact and how I can have an impact, it's through service. And so that's how I think about impact.
And the last word is generational wealth.
Generational wealth. This is something that's we hear that word a lot. And I just recently became a grandfather. And so if that word wasn't real to me.
Congratulations.
If that word wasn't real to me before, it definitely is now. When I look at my granddaughter, Nyla, I'm asking myself, what do I want to do for her? And so when I think about generational wealth for me, I think about the word execution. What do you need to execute on right now, Will, that's going to make her life easier? What do you need to execute on right now that's going to enable her to start a lot further than down the road than you started? And so when I think about generational wealth, I'm thinking about, what do I need to do today to make my tomorrow better, to make my grandchildren's tomorrow better? And it leaves a proverb with me. It says, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. And so for me, that's the measurement of a good man. If I'm on my last leg and I'm getting ready to leave this planet, I want to be able to look around and say, I left some generational wealth, not just, some bills and not just, grandpa has some great quotes. I want them to understand that grandpa moved the needle for them and that they are able to live a life that they could have only dreamed of because someone made a decision to leave generational wealth.
How will Dr. Will dominate in 2024?
Well, I'm really excited about this year. Once again, I just said that my granddaughter was just born. And so she's kind of given me a new spark in life. And so I have this continual goal that I'm after, and that's to be a billionaire. That's the pursuit I'm in. And so every year I'm focused in on that, creating more products, creating more ways to impact and serve individuals, and to get that Billy, man. That's what I'm after.
Get that Billy. Ladies and gentlemen, that is short slang for billionaire, okay? That's exactly what the gentleman is saying. He wants to
I
get
forget you
that
have this educated
ability.
audience.
You know what I
My
mean?
bad. Billionaire.
So, so let me ask you something now.
Yes, sir.
If people want to learn more about you, where can they reach out, and what do you have coming up in 2024 that's new and exciting?
Yeah, so simply, if you want to connect with me, and I would love to connect with the Vinoy audience, simply go to at Dr. Will Speaks, at Dr. Will Speaks. That's on all social media handles. That's also my website, drwillspeaks.com. We are always continuously, we have our Speakers Academy that is open enrollment for our academy. We would love for you to be a part. If you're serious about building your business, your brand, and your bank account, then that's where you want to be. We have also additional training called Master the Mic. If you want to learn how to get clarity around your keynote, I'll teach you how to build out $1 million keynote. And then always just stay abreast on our website. We always have different trainings coming up where you can be empowered. So stay connected at drwillspeaks.com, on all social media handles, Dr. Will Speaks, and I would love to connect with you.
Your final words.
My final words. Listen, tomorrow is not promised. Go out there and be great. Don't wait. Go out there and become the best version of yourself. Go out there and dominate, because that's what you were created to do.
All right, Dr. Will, we appreciate you being on the Benny Randall Show, where we believe it's your business to know. This episode was sponsored in part by Vinoy Magazine. Make sure you go to VinoyMag.com and get your copy of the Entrepreneur's Reference Guide, Vinoy Magazine, where we highlight many, many different entrepreneurs, and we can enlighten and excite your entrepreneur journey. And Dr. Will, we appreciate you, brother, for coming on the Benny Randall Show, where we believe it's your business to know. And ladies and gentlemen, let me leave you. Let me leave you with this. You know, in everything that we do, it's up to you. You can do anything that you absolutely want to do. You just got to believe it. You know what I mean? No matter what people say. People told me I wouldn't do this and I wouldn't do that and I wouldn't be this and I wouldn't be that. And I proved them all wrong. And now I don't have to do anything but just be me. All right. So I want you to live in your authentic self. Like Dr. Will said that, you know, most people don't know who you are. So get out there and let people know who you are. Whatever your special sauce is, that's what your special sauce is. You got to have, you know what that is. Nobody else knows what that is, but you know what that is, ladies and gentlemen. And with that in mind, I just want to tell you, I love you, and you can't do a damn thing about it. I'm Bennie Randall Jr., aka The Motivator, Global Entrepreneur and Business Advisor. And make sure you go to Vinoy Mag and get your copy with the Shark Tank issue, one of our most powerful and successful issues. And it's not a game. It's a lifestyle. I'll see you next time right here